All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us this evening. Much appreciated. This is Bridget Mettler at the Doctor's Technology Office. We are so excited to provide this session tonight on MailChimp and Fongo Works. These are tools I didn't know a lot about when before this whole outbreak started, and now we're getting a lot of peer requests for these types of patient communication tools. So thank you for joining us tonight. There are many tools out there. These are some of the ones that are being asked for about often. So Dr. Krystine Sambor and Dr. Jonathan Hislop have graciously offered to discuss these tools with you. This is not a sales demo. Astrid, can you mute Shelley? This is not a sales demo.
Oh, yeah.
You can use any tools that you're comfortable with. There are other options out there. Dr. Sambor and Dr. Hislop are practice level physicians, and they're here just to present what they're using, not promote one tool over another. So we just want to be clear that this is not anything about which tool is the best. It's really about what's here to meet your needs and all the different tools available and how they are actually used in practice. And Krystine and Jonathan will speak to some of the workflow, which is actually more interesting sometimes than the tool. We will be recording this session. That's why we have a smaller group this evening, so that we can share it provincially for all physicians to be able to leverage, and that so that you as peer mentors can also leverage these support sessions with when you're doing supports with the physicians in the province and the MOAs. So it's more like a train the trainer model. So here's the housekeeping slide. So by default, everybody is on mute. And if you would like to come off mute, you need to put your hand up. If we have a smaller group, we can get everybody off mute at the end, but it just keeps the background noise down as we're recording. So if you'd like to see the Q&A box, if you can see that at the bottom of your screen and just say hello to us and where you're from, that's where we'll be taking most of the questions, and I'll help moderate. We might not get to all of the questions at once, but we do have the DTO staff on the line who will help answer some of those questions either live blogging with you, or afterwards we'll follow up with you. I'll be gathering a few of the themes, and then we can ask Jonathan and Krystine some of the questions as we go, and then at the end we'll stay on the line once we sort of shut off the recording, and then you can just pepper them all you want, and I won't hold you back after that point. So you can also vote up questions. So you see that you got Leo, who's a GP from Langley there, and I can say thumbs up, that's lovely, and hello, Leo. So you can actually vote each other's questions up as well, which really helps me know which ones are the most important. So we go to the next slide. We're really excited to be just recently publishing the DTO Learning YouTube channel, which will have all kinds of webinar recordings, including this one, and instructional videos. We'll have some Doxy.me up there. We'll have hopefully some Zoom very quickly. This video will be up, and there's all sorts of different quick start guides that we've got on the go as well. We'll make sure that you get a link to that once we get it up and live. The DTO website, as you know, has the quick start guide and the virtual care toolkit, which will be in version 2 next week, hopefully as well. And as well, as you know, we have the DTO Peer Mentor Program. There are over 80 of you now, by the way, in the province, and we really appreciate the time that you've spent reaching out to us and offering to support your fellow physicians and MOAs. Much appreciated. Next slide. Perfect. Krystine and Jonathan, over to you.
Well, hi everyone, and thanks for spending your evening with us. I'm actually really excited about this sort of the trainer model. So we'd like to introduce some of these topics and think about how we can support our members going forward. So I think I agree. It's more about the workflow and the why and the how, not so much about the specific technology. So thanks to DTO for helping us put the slides together. So today we're really simple. We're going to talk about practice-wide emails. The second topic will be about calling apps. So we're going to focus today on Fongo Works, and hopefully lots of time for questions and discussion. We're going to use a slightly different flow today. So we're going to actually do some live demos and just have a few video trailers showing you the kind of things that we're putting together for the YouTube DTO Learning channel. So the first thing we're going to talk about is practice-wide emails. And this has been probably one of the most important tools that our office has used. So Jonathan and I work in the office together. very early in this pandemic, we realized that things were changing so quickly. It was really important that patients knew what was going on. And so, you know, one week we would be seeing patients in person, then we would have more restrictions on how we were accommodating them in the office. Are we testing? Are we not testing? So having the emails go out, I think was very helpful. Just to keep the patients informed, and certainly now that we're doing virtual first for 100% of the time, I think it really helps for the patients to feel like they're connected with the practice, and we've had tremendous positive feedback from the patients. So I think it's kept the patients informed, it's kept our office safe, and generally it's just cut down on general questions about testing or availability and those sorts of things. I think this really came home this week. We noticed last week that we were a little bit quieter on our virtual visits, and we were starting to worry that people were deferring their care. So I was getting a lot of comments, oh, Dr. Sambor, I'm so sorry to bother you. I need this prescription. So we sent an email out just saying that this is not going to be a matter of weeks. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we don't want to defer care. We want to deal with things when they're little problems rather than when they're big problems. And it made a noticeable difference in our interactions with our patients this week. People have really come to us with problems that, you know, I should have really heard about 2 weeks ago. So that message went out, and I think made a really big difference as far as connecting us. So we'll briefly do a demo, and it's going to just talk about the steps. So first of all, just gathering patient emails, which is probably the most challenging step. You can do that one by one. There's ways of you know, sending out text messages or different ways to compile those emails if you don't have them. Usually the reason we need this is some EMRs do have broadcast email capability, some don't. So you can export that email information and then use the MailChimp. And then of course you just need to have a system of updating those emails as you get more and more over time. And then we'll walk through a little bit of sending a practice-wide message. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to give the screen over to Dr. Hislop, and he's going to do his demos, and then I'll see you at the other side.
Okay, thanks, Krystine. And yeah, that was a great introduction. So we're going to start by going through MailChimp. And essentially, there's just a couple of steps in the process of using MailChimp. And so we'll go through that. The two main things you're going to want to be able to show people and help people with is step one, they're going to be a little confused about how they get all their patient information into MailChimp. And then step two, how to just send a simple basic email. And so we'll just go through the basics here, but it should be enough to help people understand how this works. It's once you've seen it a couple of times, it's quite straightforward, and it's pretty quick, and it's a very well designed program that has a lot of really good features that you can start to learn how to use over time. Step one is to get the information out of your EMR in the first place. And, you know, we're not going to go through this in too much detail because it's different for every EMR. And so people are going to need to talk to their EMR vendor if they don't already know how to do a demographic export. Most of the EMRs, there's a reasonably straightforward way to do that. And what you want to do is you want to get certain specific data out of the EMR. You're going to want an export that includes like a first name, a last name. I usually, for MailChimp, I try to get gender and birth date, because if you're ever looking through the MailChimp list later on, it's easier to quickly identify a patient and remember who they are if you have some of that. And then you need an email address. I've just made up a bunch of names and fake emails here. So you get that export done, and you do want to be a little careful as well to think about, you know, which ones you don't want exported. You want to try to put limits on the export, such as, you know, patients who you haven't seen in a long time and are perhaps not really under your care anymore. Perhaps patients under the age of 18 should be excluded. That's kind of a bit of a personal professional decision you need to make, and so on. And so once you've got that export, you need to make sure it's what's called a CSV file. And so in this one, so I made it as an Excel list because some EMRs will export it that way. Most of them will make it directly as a CSV file. If it is Excel, just go into the Save As menu area, and then at the bottom, go down and look for the CSV file type. And then you save it that way. It'll ask you if it's okay to replace the file you have. It'll warn you that you're going to lose certain features, and that's okay. No big deal. Continue, and now it's a CSV file type. All right, so at that point, you're ready to import it into MailChimp. And so I'm already signed into my MailChimp account here. And this isn't actually, just to orient everybody, this is not my MailChimp account. I created an additional fake one just to play with and to show everybody. And MailChimp, a couple of quick bits of terminology. First of all, for the doctors is going to be their patient list, is going to be called their audience. And when you send out an email, we're going to call that a campaign. That's how MailChimp refers to everything. Now, it's very important to everybody who sets up a MailChimp account, before they really do much at all, they want to make sure their account is set up properly. So if they go into their profile area and pick the account, and then under settings, you want to go through two quick sections, the details. And you just want to make sure all the information here is entered correctly for the office. And then secondly, you want to go to the contact information. This area is fairly important, especially towards the bottom, this section called audiences in this account, because this is information that's going to be attached to every single email that the individual sends out. And so patients, if you're sending this to the patients, they're going to see all this, and you want them to see all this, but you want to make sure it's all correct and accurate for what you want. So, phone number there should be your office phone number. If you're putting an email in, I wrote like my professional email address there, but you might want to have a dedicated email address for the office that it's okay for patients to see and send emails to. For instance, in my office, patients will sometimes contact my staff to book appointments via email. So that's the story there. So once you're sure you've got that all set up, you can click on the audience tab. And right now I've deleted all the contacts, and so you need to go and import them. So you just hit that import contact button, and it's going to ask you how you want to do an import. And so you pick that CSV file type. And let me just move my window here a little, and then you hit continue. Asks you to upload the file. And so I've got to go and just find that file. Just give me a sec here. Where did I put it? Sorry, I should have got this set up ahead of time. There it is. That's the CSV file. Continue to match. And so what it's doing here is it's trying to, the program, MailChimp, is desperately trying to figure out what each column in that spreadsheet indicates. It's often very good at it. In this case, it's doing a poor job, although it got the email address correct at the end. And you know it's correct because it shows merge fields. It should say merged, like past tense. It's set up properly. Anything that's unmatched, you need to go and match it. And this is extremely simple. You just hit the edit button, and you go to make a selection, and you tell it what it is. And it's got pretty much every entry you would already want, although there is a create new field button in case you want to call it something else. So in this case, it's first name, and then you hit save, and you move on to the next column, last name, save. This one was gender, gender, and save, and lastly, birthday, and save. Every now and then, and when everything is matched properly, you get this green bar saying all columns are matched. Every now and then it'll pick up extra columns. You can always hit the skip button if it's a column that you just don't want. Okay, good. So then there's one more screen to set up the import properly, which is to create a tag. This is optional, but I think it's strongly recommended. And it's a good way to just to figure out, to identify all the patients that are part of this import. You can add multiple tags if you want. I usually use a month and year tag. And if you don't have the tag created yet, you just write in the little window here to create a new one. For instance, some people, perhaps if they work in 2 offices and want to have 2 lists, they might call it, let's say, the North Vancouver office versus the West Vancouver office or whatever. And lastly, I'll often check off the update existing contact button, and this will help prevent duplicate entries in case you manage to recapture in this list a patient that was already uploaded onto MailChimp. I'm going to leave that off for now because the whole list is blank right now anyway. Continue to review, and it shows that you're all good. You can open up little details here to make sure you're happy with what it shows. You can go back if you need to. If you're happy, you hit import and it'll start doing its work. You can see here it was very quick because we only had a few people on that list there. If it's several hundreds, it might take a minute or two. That's it. So now you can see these the emails and first name and last name and so on was all loaded up. I always put myself as a contact on every list. That way, whenever I send the MailChimp email out, I get it back myself. And I've also got my own office staff on that list as well. So they know if I've sent something off, they get to see what that message is too, and we're all on the same page that way. Okay, so that's most of what you need to know to get the MailChimp list set up. One quick thing I'm going to point out, this Manage Contact button, in case you feel you made a mistake, you can go down and go to Import History, and you can undo whatever you did. And you can see I've actually hit undo a bunch of times because I keep doing this over again and playing with it and making, we made another video for this and so on. So you just hit undo and it'll reverse whatever you did. And even if it was one from 2 or 3 imports ago, you can still do that if you want to. So that's a way, so if you're not happy with the import, just do it over again. It's a pretty quick, simple process, really. Okay, so that's how you get the information into MailChimp. And then the second part of it is how to create an email. You can see I've already got one made, but I'm going to just quickly walk through making a new one. So it's this campaign section, and then you hit Create Campaign. And there's a whole bunch of choices there. You can make some really fancy things with MailChimp. A lot of companies use this for a variety of ways. You can see sort of little mini graphics here of the types of things you can do. But I just use it for the super simple thing of sending an email. So you pick email, you have to give it a name, and this is just an internal name. You know, it's not, nobody else is going to see what this is. And you hit begin. And then this is a little work screen to walk through creating your campaign, your email. So first of all, you have to hit who it's going to go to. Automatically, it'll be set to go to everybody. But there are some really neat features in here to restrict who you're sending it to. So if you hit this segment or tag section, for instance, you can pick, well, I only want it to go to the people in that April 2020 import. Or you can create a whole set of rules, and they can be very fancy. You can be highly selective with who this goes to. One of the really neat things, which I'm going to come back to after, is that you can set a new email to go to only people who were added to the MailChimp list after the last time you sent an email. And that's very convenient, and I'll touch on that briefly again towards the end. Okay, let's go back. Oops, I went too far back. Okay, so you set who it's to. You have to go through each step. Everything will be pre-populated, but they just want you to carefully walk through each step. And you add a subject. This is what patients are going to see. And you hit save on that. And then you go to designing the email. And at the bottom, there's just a simple text option. And this will be good for most purposes. And to understand this screen, it's pretty straightforward. You got the left side and the right side. The right side is where you actually edit everything, and the left side is what people are going to see. And there's these blocks. You can just delete any block that you don't want to appear there. And if you click on a block, it opens it up on the other side for editing. So you'll write your welcome message in there. So that'll be the content of the entire email. I'm just writing this tiny little message for now. You've got some simple editing features there. And the bottom block that you have here, you should always just leave alone. It puts in certain important little bits like an unsubscribe button and that sort of thing. When that's all set, you hit save and close and continue. And then at this point, you're pretty much ready to send it. You can send a test email to yourself first. So if you hit that, it just asks you for one address to send it to. And then if you're happy, you're going to hit the send button, and they ask you for one confirmation, and then you send it. And so once that's sent off, like I said, just very briefly, the handy little feature is, let's say you've sent a welcome message, but then you added a bunch of new contacts at a later time. If you want, hit the replicate button, and it'll open up a window to then, like I said, you can hit that selection to say, oh, I only want the welcome message to go to new people. And that's it. So those are the basics for MailChimp, and we'll stop there for now. And let me stop my screen share so we can switch back to either Dr. Sambor or the DTO team.
Jonathan, we have some questions.
Yeah.
Just wondering, how are you collecting all these emails in the first place? And there's a question on the board about blasting patients that you've had longer than 2 years, or are there any rules around that, medical legal rules? Have you looked into anything like that with collecting patient emails, or any restrictions around how long you can have them collected for?
Yeah, I mean, ideally what you've done is you've gotten, in the ideal non-pandemic world, you've gotten consent from everybody to, put their email address into MailChimp and so on. In the pandemic world where, we're accepting a lot of implied consent and so on, the fact that they've even given you their email at any point in time obviously implies that there was an intent to use it. And so I think you've got consent for that. Keep in mind, there is, as long as, like I said, you don't mess with that bottom box, there's an unsubscribe button that's put into every single email. Most people will just quickly click on that and then that's it. And it automatically removes them from your list. You don't have to do anything for that. It's done by MailChimp automatically. And as far as how do you get all the emails, there's a whole variety of ways. I mean, that's a whole subject unto itself, but briefly, a few quick ways, aside from just getting MOAs to ask people when they're calling to make appointments. There are options like you can use something called bulk SMS text messaging. Again, a whole separate subject, but these are little bits of online software you can use where if you export all the patient's cell phone numbers in your practice, you can send everybody a text message all at once and ask them to send in their email address to, let's say, your office email address. That's most of it. I just gradually collected my emails. I started doing all this like a year ago, so I'd already had most of my email addresses as all this started.
Jonathan, did you have a look at where the data was kept, if it's kept within Canada or anything like that? I know Caitlin and I are working with Privacy Works right now to do PIAs on all these tools that physicians keep asking about. Have you already seen anything like that we could leverage currently, or is this something you'd like us to add to the list? Toot sweet.
Yeah, so two things there. First of all, rules for community-based physicians in BC. It's okay for demographic information like this to be stored on American servers. That's considered completely acceptable to the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of BC. MailChimp is a United States company, and so the information will be stored on their servers there. There is a Canadian equivalent of this. I think it's called FormSite. However, there is a cost associated with using it, I think in the neighborhood of $50 a month. MailChimp is free if you have less than 2,000 contacts in your list. If you are if you're a physician attached to a facility and sending emails as part of your work and being attached to that facility, so perhaps sending emails to patients that you saw at that facility, the rules are very different and the data must be kept in Canada.
Perhaps we'll add it to our PIA then as well that we've been doing with another company, so we can do that. Dr. Hobson's making comment about adding a disclaimer on your emails, such as the CMPA recommended messaging. I imagine that you do a lot of cut and pasting with that. I know you're fairly well connected as well.
Yeah, you have a couple of options there. And in MailChimp, I mean, you can create a content block that, where you just add something to every single message. And so you'd have a variety of options like that.
Okay, what do you do if you got compound email addresses? So we've got a question here from Leo that says you send out 2 emails to 2 patients and then it's the same email. So as for here, it's metler@telus.net and you'll get both Mike and I. How does it handle something like that if you got 2 separate patients but they're using the same email? Have you run into that?
I think I have, and it won't let you actually. When the patient tries to get uploaded, it's going to say they're already in the system. And so you will not be able to add 2 different names like John Smith and Jane Smith with a single email address. It'll only let you add one of them.
We'll
And
have to get
you'll get an error. You'll get like a report when you do the import that'll give you a list of names it could not add.
Okay, so maybe I'll have to go back and tell them to create a separate one. I don't want to run out of time because I know.
By the way, a very nice little trick. This only works for Gmail accounts. For Gmail accounts, anything before the @ you can put a dot anywhere you want in the name, and it creates it. It makes it seem like it's two different email accounts, but the original user will get all those emails. So for instance, jonathan.hislop@gmail.com is equal to jonathanhislop@gmail.com. It's the exact same address, except a system like MailChimp will think it's two different ones.
I did not know that.
That's a great tip. Yeah.
So I use that for all my patients where they've got like kids. For one of the other systems I use for Medio, everybody has to have their own email account. And so if the parent has a Gmail account, I just get them to put dots somewhere in the name, or they can put a plus sign and you can write anything you want after that. So like jonathan.hislop plus Phoenix, my kid's name, at gmail.com still comes to me.
There you go. You heard it here first.
There you go.
Okay. We don't want to run out of time. It's 6:30
Right.
and we want to also speak to Fongo, but is there anything burning last minute before we move back to Krystine and to move to Fongo? We're also going to stay on the line afterwards and just open it up and take lots of peppered questions as well. If not, back over to you, Krystine.
Okay, I think what I might do is actually jump over to the next slide, guys. At least try to. Oops, there it goes. Just to introduce our next app. So Fongo Works is something that we've been playing around with in the office. A couple things have come up. So first of all, we've had to redirect our phone lines. Our staff are 100% working remotely from home. And our system was such that if you wanted to change the redirect, you'd have to actually physically go into the office. So this has been very valuable as far as redirecting. And then you can use the website to then manage day-to-day who's getting messages and how that's all working. It's also been very helpful. We get lots of patients that either have a block. If you have a blocked number, they won't answer, or their system won't allow that phone number to go through. So it's been very helpful to have basically a fake number that goes up, and it's labeled North Shore Medical Group. So that's been very helpful. So I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan to just work through how to set that up, and then we'll show you some tutorials at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing. There we are.
All right. So Fongo. Let me just get one more window going here. So yeah, so Fongo Works, it's an internet-based phone line. This is their website, and they have two options. There's a free version, and it really is completely free. You're not gonna have to give them a credit card or anything like that. And you can have up to 6 people on that account, all for free. And to be clear, you can have all 6 people all using the same line simultaneously, and it'll work. It should work for everybody. They do have a what's called a pro version, a professional version. It expands it so you can have up to 15 people on the line at the same time. So which one decides to go with really just depends on the office and the office structure and so on. In our office, we've got a large group of docs. So each, we've got, most docs each have their own sort of phone line. You could certainly, I share mine with one other doc. If it's a small enough office, you can manage with the 6 of them, like the free version. If you're a larger office, you might be able to get away with the 15. If it's a very large office, you might even need multiple of those. So you can go and start creating a free account. They'll tell you what you need. You're going to basically want to know like a name, cell phone number, and email address for each person who's going to be on the account. And that's going to be the doctor and the staff, the MOAs, and so on. So you go through creating the account, and this is me signed into my account right now. And I'll show you a few quick things that you need to do to set it up. And we'll try to sort of do a little mini demo of how it works. There's 2 parts that you need to set up. One is the online account itself. And second of all, there's an app that goes on your phone, and you have to have both. And I'm going to show you both. So here you can see we've already added team members here. And when you open the area up, So you've got the information that's in there, and there's a couple of buttons on the right, Authorize App and Configure Call Handling. We're going to go through those in detail in a moment because they're very important to set up. But for the first part, just make sure you've got each team member with all their information in the account. Then you move over to the middle tab, the Receptionist. And so this is basically an automated voice that's going to answer the phone for you when a call comes into the Fongo line. And you can actually go and pick out like what kind of voice and accent they have and so on. You can play samples of it there and pick out whatever you like. Then you go all the way down and you create what's called the reception greetings. This is what the person's actually going to say on the phone. And I'm going to sort of, let me just shorten it here to give people a sense of it. But you're just going to say, okay, you've reached the, this office phone line, give some basic information. And then the key is towards the end, you can tell them what to do. So like press 1 for Danny, 2 for Michelle, or for after hours urgent issues, press 0 to leave a message for the physician on call. Dr. Holowenko and I, we've actually been using this Fongo line for like a year now, mostly for this on-call purpose, because it's a way to redirect the call to our own cell phone very, very easily. Once you've set your greeting up, and by the way, we have like multiple different greetings, and we can just come in here, any of us on the team can come in here and just switch this out for a different message and save it, and it's super quick. And that just depends on whatever your office circumstances are. Sometimes, there might be a weekday message, a weekend message, a pandemic message, an end of pandemic message, hopefully someday, that sort of thing. Then you move up and there's what's called a phone tree here. And so it's showing you, well, if the person presses 1, the call is going to go, this is my MOA Danny. And so when the person presses 1, it's going to go, the call that has come into Fongo will get redirected again to Danny and, or let's say to me, and whatever the information that you have entered there. So I've got my cell phone, it'll go straight to my cell phone. So you've set up the members, you've set up the receptionist, the phone tree, and the last two things you have to do is number 1, you configure the call handling. And this part's a tiny bit confusing, so I'm just going to walk through it real quick. You've got 3 choices. You can either have something go straight to voicemail, and it should perhaps say Fongo voicemail. And so if you've got that checked, when somebody, let's say they press 1 to speak to me, when they press 1, nothing's actually really going to happen. My phone's never going to ring. It's just going to go straight to a Fongo voicemail, and the person can leave a message. If you pick forward to cell phone, what's going to happen is my phone will ring, and then what happens next depends entirely on how my phone is set up. If I answer the call, so I'm on the phone with the person. If I don't answer the phone, then it's going to go to my cell phone's voicemail rather than Fongo's voicemail. So whatever message I've got set up right now on my regular cell phone, that's what the patient's going to end up hearing. I never really pick either of those two. I pretty much always have the third one picked, which is forward to cell phone. And then if I don't answer, then it goes to Fongo voicemail. And this is how I keep the Fongo messages separate from my own cell phone messages. So that's what the call handling is, and then you save that. And the last thing you need to do is to authorize the app. Now, before you authorize the app, you need to first have the app. And so I've got a separate screen here, and what you're looking at here is actually I've got my cell phone connected right now to this Zoom presentation. There's my kids. So to get the app, you go into the App Store and type in Fongo. And a quick note of caution, there are 2 Fongo apps. You got to get the right one. And this blue Fongo one is the wrong one. You need to go down and you want this green one, which is Fongo Works for Business. That's the one that you want. So you download that. I've already got it downloaded, so I'm going to scooch over to it. Now, once you've got it downloaded, you can go and you'll hit online this Authorize App button. When you hit that, a code is going to be sent to you either by email or by text message, a code that lets you go into the app and links it to this account that you just created. You only have to do that one time. You'll then be able to open it up and log in, and you can see that the main screen in Fongo actually looks just like a phone pad. So that's the Fongo screen, and just to make it really obvious, if I go back out and open up my cell phone's phone tab, so of course it looks like that. So when you go into Fongo, you're connected right now. If your account is all set up, one of your options is you could just go ahead and dial a number and you can call out. When you call out, it's not going to show, when you call out from within the Fongo app, it will not show your cell phone number to the person you're calling. It's going to show the Fongo number. In this case, this number up here. Or if you have it set up, it'll show the name of your company or group. In this case, we've got it set as North Shore Medical Group. And I'll show you how that works in a few moments. So that's how you would use the app to call out. When somebody calls in, it just rings and you answer the phone. Now you can go into the account settings and you can actually pick a unique ringtone. And so the idea here is to pick a ring that's different than the one you use on your own cell phone. That way, when a Fongo call comes through, you're going to be able to tell that it's not a personal call coming to your cell phone, it's a Fongo call coming through. So that's another convenient little feature. Okay, so that's most of what I wanted to show you there. What we're going to do now is we'll try to do a little demo, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you as a physician if you're calling out from the Fongo line. So I'm going to call to my own cell phone. And just before I do that, just a reminder, it's a tiny bit awkward here because I'm calling out from the Fongo app on my cell phone, and of course it's going to ring back onto the same cell phone, but onto the phone itself. Anyway, you'll see in a moment. So just bear with me that it's a single device I'm using here, which is a little bit atypical. So when you hit call, you do have the option of hiding the call, but of course the whole point here is we want to show the number. And so the number you're seeing there, that 778 number, that is the Fongo line, not my cell phone number. So I call out to that and we'll give it a moment. There's always a tiny little delay. It knows it's calling me just because I keep calling myself on it. But then when the call comes through, what it's showing here is that it's the North Shore Medical Group calling. It does not show my cell phone number, even though that I'm using my cell phone to call out. So I'm gonna cancel that on both ends. I think I made the app unhappy. Okay, there we go. Okay, and I guess the last thing to show is if you do let people leave messages, you can pick them up. In this message area here, if you have a message there, it'll show a little 1. Similarly, the app itself, you can see on my WhatsApp, there's a message there. It'll show a little 1 on that as well. And lastly, if you get a message, you'll actually get an email alert to whatever email you have in there as a team member. You'll have that there as well, like an email message to that email account, that just stating that you have a Fongo message. Okay, so that's most of it. Last little thing I want to show is just the convenience of setting up the phone tree and switching it around whenever you want. I've had a number of questions. For instance, there was one specialist office I was helping with this, and they said, well, I want my MOA to get calls, but I don't want a patient ever to call me. So what do I do? And the answer is you can actually have it set up the way it's set up here right now, which is you've got your MOA there and nothing else. It only goes to them. A patient can never actually reach you that way. Similarly, let's say you used the Fongo line to call to a patient, and of course they saw that Fongo number. And patients, you know, they learn quick or they make assumptions. If they decide that, oh, okay, that's the office line, it showed me North Shore Medical Group, and then they try to call back to that number, of course, they still can't actually reach you, the doctor. It's, they're going to be presented with that same reception greeting and the same options for who they speak to, and it should lead back to your MOA. What do you do if down the road you decide, well, either this isn't working for me or the pandemic's over, I don't need this anymore, I don't really want to use it anymore. Similarly, very, very easy. Just put a message in there, change the greeting, indicate that this line was previously being used by you. We're back in the office, we're using our office line again. Please call us at the following number. And in the phone tree, take every option out, leave everything unassigned, and it won't lead anywhere at all. Nor will they even be able to leave a message there at that point. And so you can revert back to your current situation whenever you need to. Okay, I think maybe I'll stop there, and that way we'll have some good time for questions.
All right. Thank you very much. Krystine, is that where we pausing here, or are we going back to the slide decks first? Or
I've got the slide deck there, and I thought we could take some questions. I'll just add a few things. So having the ability to just type in your message has been so helpful. So when we went to full virtual, we could change your message instantly to let people know that we're still able to see you safely if need be. And a really handy thing we've done is we've actually asked patients just to include their email address when they leave a message. And it's been a great way for us then to be able to add that to their chart. So at the office, we had such a time limited message that we couldn't get it all in. And so it's nice to be able to change that really on a weekly basis. So that's been very valuable. I'm really looking forward to the end of pandemic message. Jonathan, we'll start working on that. So are there any questions?
wonderful. Thanks so much for doing this for us. This is great to see this live action. And Jonathan, I believe you have a longer full video that we'll put up on our website for you as well, where you get into the details of how to set it all up and how to set all the settings up and all the, get into more of the minutia. So we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that as well. This was more just to whet your appetite. So Dr. Wong, just to show a hand, put your hand up if it didn't answer your question, but are all the phone calls being answered live, or the patients leaving messages to be called back right away? So I think what Dr. Hislop said is you can have either or, it's more optional, up to you. Did that answer your question? If not, just put your hand up and we'll get you off of mute. And another question we have is, can you text or receive text messages using Fongo, or is it just voice only?
Yeah, if it's okay, maybe I'll take the screen share back so I can show people.
Sure.
And I'll discuss it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I'm off.
Okay, so yeah, so technically there is a messages section right there. Now it's not, it's important to understand that on the free version, you can't do that at all. If you do the subscribed version, that's one of the features that's included at that point, where you can send messages back and forth. So you can technically do messages that way if you want to. I've never really used it. I mean, I'm just using the free version. I would never need that version myself, because my EMR allows me to send messages to my patients that way. And then it's like recorded in the chart, the whole discussion, so it's pretty convenient. One other point I'd wanted to make, there is one limitation to all this, something I just discovered very recently, which is that it will only work in certain areas. It will not work everywhere in BC. And actually, let me amend that a bit. Technically, it works everywhere in BC. But you can only get certain area codes for certain cities, which is basically all around Vancouver as well as Victoria. And I do know, I spoke to somebody today who's in like in White Rock, and it worked there. So it's pretty much probably most of the sort of lower mainland area. I don't know about like Abbotsford or Chilliwack. Outside those areas, like I said, it will still work, except there's a possibility that you would end up needing to have the premium version, because it would be considered like a long distance call. If you make a long distance call out, it is very inexpensive. It's like 2 cents per minute. So you're not going to incur any huge charges that way, but there will be something. And what happens if the patient calls you, like to the Fongo line, it's a little bit more up in the air at that point, and depends heavily on the individual's landline plan or cell phone plan. You know, some cell phone plans you can call across the country for free anyway. So for them, it wouldn't matter. So just to be aware of that, so that this may not be a solution for everybody across BC, although, you know, it works for quite a large chunk of the docs that are out there. And yeah, the way I think Dr. Sambor kind of touched on this a little bit, the way we have our office set up right now, our workflow is right now, like nobody's really at the office most of the time. And what we did is our office line is call forwarded to the Fongo line. So patients, we didn't have to tell them the Fongo number. They just keep calling the office still. And the office redirects the call to the Fongo number. They hear the reception greeting, they pick a number, and then it redirects it again to whoever's cell phone it ought to go to. So super convenient that way. And everybody can just stay at home, and my MOAs can each be reached at their own home, all without us changing our numbers around or anything.
Awesome. And again, we weren't here to promote one tool over another. It's just how a physician in practice is actually getting some communications out. Dr. Wong, I see you have your hand up. We're just going to get you off mute. There you go. You're muted on your own side. There you go. Now you're live.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I was curious about the workflow because so if patients are calling in to the number, but your MOAs are distributed all over, how do you sort of route who gets to answer a call, or are any calls actually answered live, or do you actually prefer the patients call, they leave a message for the MOA, and the MOA immediately gets back to them by message?
Yeah, so that's a great question, and the answer is by using the phone tree. So my MOAs can go on here anytime, and they figure it out for themselves what the phone tree should show, and they can adjust the reception greeting to reflect that. Like I said, we've got a whole bunch of reception greetings just pre-written, and they just cut and paste it in depending on what the circumstance is. So I've got like an MOA and a nurse, and if they're both working, then we might add the second one on to the phone tree. If one of them has to step away for a while, they're going to be unavailable for a bit, they can just go in and, you just switch it to a different person and then save it. And then when the person presses 1, so it goes to that other person instead. So it takes a little bit of team communication. Most of the time, the phone tree is pretty static. But you can take people on and off whenever you need to, change the reception greeting whenever you need to suit the current situation. And again, patients never need to really know what's actually going on there.
And actually what we've done is we're a bigger group, but each we have sort of coupling or little pods within our office. So each little individual clinical area has had their own Fongo, so matching with the reception. But you could put a generic, press 1 for reception, and then you could continuously just change who that person would be under the phone tree. So that would work as well in a bigger office.
Thank you. Dr. Chang has a question. I just want to make sure it was covered. So are the messages to your individual phone or to the entire clinic? So when the message comes in from the clinic, and Dr. Chang, please put your hand up if we don't answer this well enough and you want to speak to it, you're more than welcome. Oh, he's already practicing with his hand up. So Jonathan, when the message comes in, can it go to anyone, or is there a main line that anyone can pick the message up, or is that it? It goes to one line, somebody's grabbed it, and you're out of luck.
Right, so when a patient, so the reception answers, it presents whatever options there are for the phone tree, and then the person has to pick one. I don't think you could, I think you can set, you could probably set 0 to some sort of, you could probably create a member or something where if you just wanted people to have a general message box they could access, you could probably create something like that, like create a member called, voicemail or something. And then they'd be able to leave a general message there if you wanted to. My office, I never like using, having patients leave messages. We try to discourage that and just have people call us back or send us emails because we just kind of prefer it that way. Each person, each member does have their own voice message option. And where is it? I think it's under, there's a section here for voice greetings. I mean, you can create individual greetings for each member in the team if you wanted to. And that would be separate from the reception greeting.
And again, in that longer video you have, I know there's a lot more detail on how to set these settings. So everyone will get a copy of that afterwards. Krystine has a really good question, which I was wondering about. What's the catch with Fongo? If it's free, it just sounds too good to be true. So what are they getting out of this?
Yeah, so I think the answer there is that you're looking at this, at how awesome it is as perhaps a small medical office. And the short answer is it is actually awesome, very awesome for that. And they probably never envisioned this at all. The business model here is they're geared towards small businesses, and don't think of medical offices, think of a variety of other small businesses where they quickly often end up needing more than the 6 members. And so they're hoping, a small business maybe starts with their free one, the business grows and quickly discovers they need more like the 15. And so they'll then start paying for the premium version. And so, you know, I suspect that happens quite often. So I think that's what their model is to try to capture people this way and hope they move up. Never having probably considered that for a small medical office, the free version is all you're potentially ever going to need.
I think people have caught on because it was quite busy on Fongo Works. So the one thing I will say is sometimes there's a bit of a time lag. So if you're making a new setting and you're not hearing the new message right away, there can be just a little bit of a time lag in the system. It does eventually kick in, but I think there's a lot of businesses that are using this right now.
Yeah, just I think that's a very good point Dr. Sambor is making is I know right when the pandemic started, I wanted to tell everybody about it. And I told everybody in my own office right away. And at that point in time, their system actually went down for a while. And it took about a week and a half. And it was actually working for me that whole time, but nobody could create a new account or anything like that. It's up and running again, and it's been running for a long time. This isn't like some brand new system, but I think they probably started getting quickly overwhelmed. The system, you say, what's the catch? Coming back to that, there is a catch to anything free, which is that, the system is very good, but it's not 100% perfect. We've definitely had a couple of the docs who, for some reason, they can never seem to leave a voice message, like when they test the system out. That seems to only happen for the occasional person. Like for me, like today, my voice messages were still working all day, even as they were telling me they couldn't get any. It's not clear why. So the system is not perfect, and we don't want to present it that way. It's a tool, and it's a tool that, we don't have, I haven't found any better alternative to, and it is working for us for the most part. It's working for me very, very well. But yeah, that's perhaps one of the types of catches is, to a degree you get what you pay for.
That is a very good segue into Gina's question, actually, that she's had some trouble with Fongo dropping calls after 30 seconds. Have you had any issues with dropping? And she's mentioning about turning on an alternate Fongo Works connection under the troubleshooting tab. I'm just not quite sure on how you've done some troubleshooting. Have you run into any issues at all where you've had to maneuver around?
Yeah, so I've never had a dropped call. There was one day for a couple of hours where I just could not access Fongo at all, like on my phone. When you sign in, here, my phone is still there. Let me just go back out and back in. And when you go in, it's not showing it right now. At the very, very top of the screen, sometimes it shows connecting to the Fongo network. And that day it was just red for a couple of hours. I couldn't connect. It is dependent on a little bit on your Wi-Fi, and so if you're getting a lot of dropped calls, you might want to just take a careful look and make sure you've got a good strong Wi-Fi connection. You also want to be careful using Fongo if you're not on a Wi-Fi area, because you're potentially going to then end up using your cell phone's cellular data, which for a voice call like this can add up quite a bit. So you can end up using a lot of your cellular data that way. Most people, their home plan is massive, like many gigabytes, but a cell phone data plan might only be 1 gigabyte a month, and a call might be easily 100 megabytes or more. So yeah, I've never, literally in a year, I've never had a single dropped call. So it's hard for me to answer that one.
Yeah, I haven't either. I haven't had any drop calls. I've had it sometimes be a little glitchy, like not showing up messages. So if you swipe it off your iPhone and then bring it up again, it seems to do a little bit of a reset. So yeah. I wonder if you're having.
Feel free to kill it like that and then open it back up again. I think
you see it kind of reloading and reconnecting. There it goes, connecting to Fongo Works, and sometimes that will fix the problems. But yeah, I've had quite lengthy conversations with no problems.
Awesome. And just flipping back to MailChimp. You're using the free version, I believe, is what you said, but do you know how much the paid version is, and have you explored with that? Like if you were to do more patients, like up to 10,000 or something?
Yeah, let me sign out, I think.
Well, we're actually using the paid version on our side of the clinic. because we decided, so we were on a different EMR, so we have the additional 11 physicians on one MailChimp. So we've used it just for numbers.
Awesome.
But you could individually just send, under 2,000 at a time.
All right, we've got just a few minutes left. We are going to end right on time, so we have a nice clean recording, and let anyone that wants to drop off, but we will stay on the line. We'll just open up all the mics, so if you're not muted on your own side, be prepared. Hit that mute button or we'll hear what's happening in your kitchen. And I just want to see if there's any last burning questions for anybody with a hands up before I start wrapping us up. No, we're good. Carol, I just checking on you. We have Carol Rimmer, our director here from the Doctor's Technology Office, and she's quite connected provincially. And I'd just like to give her a few minutes to speak, if she would, on what she's seeing in some of the developments in privacy, security, and in this pandemic. Carol?
Hi, everybody. Just wanted to reiterate, I think many of, if not all of you have heard me say this before, but for the purposes of this pandemic, we're sort of relaxing the rules around privacy and security. So please do whatever it takes for you to be able to connect with your patients. Don't worry about privacy and security for the purposes of the short term. Having said that, and I heard this directly out of the mouth of the deputy minister, and he basically said, do what you have to do and we'll beg forgiveness later. So, feel free to use whatever you need to. I will caution you though that, I know that physicians are no different than anybody else. It's a matter of what you get used to. And so I don't want you to, start using things that may not meet our privacy and security requirements if you plan on using them in the long term. So as Bridget said, we are doing privacy and security assessments on all the tools that we know about to make sure, where they're at, and we can advise you one way or another on tools. But if you're planning on doing something long term, then please look into the privacy and security requirements. It's not an issue for now because we just have to get on with life in this situation. And then the only other thing to reiterate, if there's people on the line that haven't heard me say it already, we, well, two things, I guess. One, you might have heard me say before, and the other one you might not have. So we did get funding through Canada Health Infoway to provide Zoom licenses for everybody who wants one in the province. It's the Zoom for Healthcare version. So, I'm not suggesting that if you're using Doxy or Medio or something else that you should switch. But if you don't have a tool and you're looking for something to use, please let us know and we'll connect you up. They're being deployed through the Office of Virtual Health at the PHSA, but just call DTO and we can hook you up. The other thing, which is brand new news, nobody's heard it yet before, this morning I got approval from GPSC to provide access to people who have not got it set up yet, but would like to do e-faxing. We will be offering licenses for SR fax. So also reach out to DTO if you want to do that. It may take us a day or two just to get set up with SR fax and sign a contract and all that stuff, but reach out and let us know.
Carol, you're like the Easter Bunny. My goodness. All the good stuff.
I'm trying.
All right. So I'm going to start wrapping us up. Thank you so much, Krystine and Dr. Jonathan Hislop today too, as well, for joining us. My goodness, you guys just keep coming to bat for us over and over again and helping us. And I want to thank the peers on the line and to those of you that have been listening to this recording as well. I know this is a lot of important work you are doing to meet the physicians in British Columbia and the MOAs where they're at. These are not easy times, but a lot of you have just put your hands up and jumped right in, and we couldn't appreciate you more for it. So thank you very much for that, and we hope you find this helpful. Again, you will get a copy of everything as well as the video that Jonathan has produced as well that goes into a lot more detail. We'll have that posted very quickly on our DTO YouTube channel that we now have. So So I'm going to say goodbye, and we will stay about a minute silence, and then I'll get everyone off of mute. If you would like to stay with us, we'll just stay on the line just a little bit longer. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.